Hey Zwifters, welcome back to No Breakaways, your source for all Zwift racing tips and tricks. We're back after a couple week hiatus to preview course number 1 in season 2 of the ZRL on the Richmond Reverse course. Should be super fun. Let's get to it. Here's a look at the Richmond UCI course. We're just going around in a clockwise direction this time, so you'll hit reverse 23rd Street first, then reverse Libby, and then you'll go up the East Main climb. We are doing 2 laps of the course. I think it's going to be about 32.3 kilometers with 311 meters of elevation gain. Should be a pretty fun course, but it is a little getting used to. I would highly suggest that you go ahead and ride the course first, maybe even a couple times. I rode it twice, and the second time felt a lot more natural than the first. The first time around, it just felt weird, to be honest. Here's the Zwift Hub look at the course. I highlighted in yellow the reverse 23rd Street climb and the reverse Libby Street climb. These are 2 very hard climbs. These are going to be 2 of the points where the race can break apart. I didn't highlight the Main Street climb. It looks really steep there, but it's not actually. It's actually a pretty easy climb. It's very draftable, and we'll talk about it more during the ride preview. There's also 2 sprint points on the course, Broad Street and Monument Avenue. They're going obviously in the reverse direction. We'll take a look at those and kind of break those down and what's at stake in each of those as well. I have a link to the Zwift Insider article breaking down the new point structure for this season. They've changed up things quite a bit. I think it's going to make it much more strategic, but let's take a look at the preem points. There are 2 types. The first is the first across the line. These are the ones that are available each lap around the course, and whoever gets across the reverse 23rd Street and the 2 sprints are eligible for the first across the line bonuses each lap. And the other type of preems are the fastest through segments are for whoever has the fastest times on those segments overall. So this isn't a lap by lap one. It's just overall fastest segment. Again, take a look, read that Zwift Insider article. These are going to change the strategy of the races quite a bit because there's going to be an absolute ton of points available. So the points at the reverse 23rd Street hill, you have the fastest across the line and the fastest through segment. For the reverse Broad Street sprint, only fastest across the line. So that will be available both times around, but it doesn't matter who goes through that segment the fastest. But the reverse Monument Avenue sprint has both of those types of sprints. So whoever is first across the line and who's ever fastest through is going to get those points. So that's going to change up things really significantly with the fastest through points, because one of your things you may want to do is on the first lap with a great big bunch, you may want to try to sprint through that bunch like they do on some of the sprint rides that they have to get that fastest time. So it's going to be a totally different strategy potentially than just going out to get first across the line. So some really cool tactics. I think this is going to make these races play out in a much different way than they did in season 1. There are 3 enabled power-ups during this race: Arrow, Draft, and Ghost. Interestingly, none of these really help you much up the hills. You could use the Arrow maybe to launch yourself into a hill, but these are going to be more aimed towards the sprint points and maybe seeing if you could get away. I kind of like the idea of using the Ghost maybe to see if you can secure some of those sprint points maybe on the second lap. Would be interesting when the brakes are more broken up if you're in that top pack. The Arrow you could also use on the sprint points to try to sprint through the bunch. And most likely the people taking the fastest through segments, what they're going to do is going to be dangling off the back of the bunch, and they're going to sprint through a bunch to get that fastest segment, just like I've ridden on the Kinetic Cruisers ride on Fridays where they sprint through. And that's the absolute fastest way to get through these sprint points. So it will be very interesting to see how these are deployed, how they're used at each of the points, and add just quite a bit of strategy into these races that maybe we didn't have last season. There are the pens over on your left. You're going to come out, you're going to take a left, and we're going to start our clockwise loop. You can see a right-hand turn coming up. That is where the Governor Hill starts. So it's going to be a fast start in terms of speed, but something where I'm betting almost the whole pack is going to be together at the bottom of Governor Street Hill going into reverse 23rd, which will be the first big selection point of the race. Probably, 2 or 3 minutes into it, a little bit reminiscent of the New York course that we rode last season. So let's skip over to reverse 23rd Street Hill and take a look. Here is a look at the reverse 23rd Street climb. It's about 1.1 kilometers, 3.5% grade. As you can see, the start of the climb is very tame, but it does kick up. And so really, it's a very strange segment when you ride it, and that's why I suggested riding the course a couple times. All these segments feel a little weird from where they start, and it doesn't feel like the actual climb starts where the line on the road is. So it will be a much harder segment than some of these times suggest. So my expected times for this climb, based on the May 2nd, the vegan tofu tornado race, where you had some of the big names racing, I'm expecting Cat A to go through in 125 to 135 at 8 watts per kg. The Cat A women's 140 to 155 at 5.8 watts per kilogram. Cat B men, Cat B 140 to 155 at 5.5 watts per kg. Cat C 205 to 225, 4.1, and Cat D 240 to 3 minutes at 3.0. It is important to remember with these new primes, people are going to be really blasting some of these segments with the intention that, you know, if they can get that fastest through for the whole race, you get 20 points, which is the same as finishing very high in these races. So it's going to be a little bit different. I think there's a lot more potential for breaks, especially on reverse 23rd and reverse Libby than maybe there would have been in the previous racing format where these where the preems weren't as highly valued. So you're going to come through this intersection and you're going to see some flashing lights up there, and there are two little crosswalks. At that second crosswalk is where reverse 23rd Street Hill starts. As you can see, it's very, very flat. Even when you take this left-hand turn, it stays flat. We're going to take a look at this whole hill, but remember to stay in the draft. Some people might sprint off at the start, but ultimately, this hill doesn't start for a little bit. So the watts per kilogram averages are deceiving, and you need to wait until that right-hander up there to where you really see the actual hill part of it. I'm not sure why the start of the KOM is so far back, but this will be a really interesting climb. It's going to be a combination of, I think, drafting skill and then, you know, 1 minute pop like a lot of the Zwift races are. This will be the first big decision point in the race. This is a place where there are first across the line and fastest through segments, so people are going to be going all out on this part. It'll be interesting to see if there are splits in the field, you know, on the flat part. To be honest, I can't really see it, but I think the pace will be picking up on the flat part. So be ready for that. Don't get caught dangling off the back if people try to make a break at the front. So here you can see the hills start to kick up right after this intersection. It really kicks up and the actual hill starts. It's about 7 or 8% all the way up. And we will we'll watch the video and see the rest of the hill. So as you can see, it is a bit of a blind finish here. You go around this turn and you're going to see the banner right there. So, you know, if you're trying to take the preem points, you probably want to be going around that corner to try to get to that banner first. It's not very far. I'll also say that little 4% kick when it looks like it's flat is interesting. In some place where I think if somebody eases up, you know, it may be a nice place for a team to put on some pressure and unexpectedly break up a group and catch some people off guard to, you know, maybe drop some people. Because, you know, most likely you're going to lose well over half the field up that reverse 23rd Street climb in most of the races, maybe other than the Premier League. So it'll be a really interesting one to see how the tactics play out. That takes us all the way to reverse Libby, which starts right here. You see right before that left-hand turn, kick up to a 10% grade. And that right-hander you see coming up you're going to see it kick all the way up to a 22% grade. So what you're going to need to do is put in a huge kick to get up and over this, and then it's going to basically flatten out at the top. So let's take a look at the expected times up this climb. For the Cat A, 45 to 55 seconds at 7 watts per kilogram. This is a bit deceptive because, again, the start of this hill where the line on the road is pretty flat for the first part. So most likely it's going to be, you know, like normal Zwift riding for the A's, maybe 4.5 watts per kilogram for the first 10 seconds. And then they're going to have to fly up the second half at 10 watts per kilogram. And same with all the cats. The watts per kilogram is very deceptive. For the Cat A women, you're looking probably 1 minute to 1:15 at 5.9. Cat B, 1 minute to 1:10. In some of the variation in these times are based on where I think things are going to end up in the different divisions between Asia, Europe, and the Americas. Cat C, 115 to 125, 4.1, and Cat D, 130 to 140 at 3. And again, I cannot emphasize enough that don't expect to, if you're a Cat C rider, to peg it at 4.1 and be able to keep with the group. You're going to have to go at 3.5 for the first little bit, and then you're going to have to bump it up to 5 or 4.5 or 4.7 to get up the steep part of the hill with the group. So here is the start of that Main Street hill. It's going to start right before this turn. You go through that long flat and it starts going up. There is that little kick at the start. It's not long enough to lose anybody, but you can see you kind of settle into a 3% grade, 2-3%, which is very, very draftable. And I honestly, it's weird. When I first looked at this course, I thought this was going to be a real decision point, kind of like Governor Street was, but it's not. So here is really the point where it's going to kick up. You go through this last intersection and you're going to see the road start to pick up a little bit. Where into the 6, 7, 8% range, where you're going to want to really probably kick hard. I would guess people are going to save it for this spot. So let's skip ahead to those sprint points and we'll break them down. All right, here we are coming up on this left-hander. This is going into the reverse Broad Street sprint. And the reverse Broad Street sprint, if you look up there in the top left-hand corner, is only 0.06 kilometers long from right here on the road to the banner. So don't be waiting for that to start your sprint. Even me just riding alone, I rode it in 6 seconds. So you're going to have to start your sprint pretty early. So here's the Monument Street sprint. There is the start of the sprint point coming up right there. This will be a pretty short sprint, but you'll be able to see it the whole way coming up. So I'm sure the lead out train will start pretty early for you. It's not that short a sprint, obviously. It'll probably take about 15 seconds. So, you know, the person with the highest 15-second power may win this, but this would be a really good place where if you're in a big pack and you wanted to try to sprint through the pack to get those fastest overall time segments, it might make sense. All right, here we are coming up towards the finish. It's a long, flat, straight finish. It's going to be a sprinter's finish. So the best sprinters in the group are going to win this one. Will be really fun this week. I'm really looking forward to getting to race with everybody again and start up the season. Okay, that's the preview for race number 1 of season 2 on the Richmond Reverse course. I'm really looking forward to seeing how these new adjusted preems pay out. Everybody's going to be racing all the way to 83rd position because there are points everywhere. Going to be a really fun season. I'm really looking forward to it. Next week on RGV, I'll maybe add a little bit of detail to the video I did previously, but pretty much the same thing. I am going to be trying to race these courses in the future to get a little bit better idea what it's going to be like and hopefully get some pros on to preview these courses with me and give you a deeper level of insight of what to expect. I'll see you next time. Click like and subscribe. Talk to you later.